Okay, so in this lab we'll look at the cloud infrastructures and service-oriented architectures. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look to see if we can integrate with Amazon S3 data buckets. So the way that data is stored within the Amazon cloud is inside buckets. So what we'll do is we'll interface to them, we'll list our current buckets, and then we'll create one, list what's in it, and so on. Okay, so we're using the Affirma 3# application to do this. So what we have is we have a number of instances which are running inside the Amazon cloud. And so the first thing we'll do is to open up our project. And here it is. Okay, so the important thing here is that there's actually an access key and a secret access code that we get from our Amazon account. Okay, so this is a very simple console application. What we'll do is we'll run this method, which doesn't actually have any code, executable code in it just now. But this will allow us to be able to access S3 storage, and then from there we can list our buckets. Okay, so the first little bit of code is here. We'll just paste that in. Okay, so for this we should be able to list all our buckets. So initially we define our access keys, then we can list our buckets using the wrapper that is included in the project, and we can see we can add a bucket, we can copy objects, list buckets, and so on. Okay, so we list our bucket and so on. Okay, so we'll run this. Okay, so we can see it comes back in XML. It's obviously encapsulated in SOAP. So we see here we have one bucket called network sims. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just check to see if that really does exist. Just takes a minute to load. And there we go, there's our bucket there. Okay, so we'll create a new bucket. And we've got an exception there. So that shows that that bucket's already been used. Okay, so this one hasn't been used. So now we can actually have a look and we can list what's in the bucket. And we'll just check to see if that bucket now exists inside the Amazon cloud. And it does. So now what we can do is that we can delete the bucket, and that's it gone. Okay, so this was a very simple example of how we can actually create a bucket and delete it. We obviously have to watch that we haven't called our bucket the same name as a bucket that already exists inside the Amazon cloud. Okay, so let's have a look at the next part. So in this part, what we'll do is that we'll actually upload a string using the add string object into the bucket. It's quite easy to do this. We'll just uncomment out a little bit of code. Okay, so the buckets themselves can hold lots of different things, such as strings, files, encrypted files, and so on. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll add that into our bucket. And we'll just add it there. Okay, so we'll create a bucket, then we'll add a string to it. It will be called this is a test, and then we'll list it. Okay, so we create our key pair here. Okay, so there's our bucket. So we'll create a new bucket. It's added the string object, and here we go. So here's the result that's came back. So there's the key string there, which is the key that we've actually added, and then the actual value that we have. This key defines the time last modified, and so on. Okay, so there's my test string. Okay, so let's go on to the next part of the lab. So with this, what we'll do is we'll use a Windows form to be able to access our buckets. Obviously makes it slightly easier for us. Okay, so we've got some code here for the create button. Okay, so we'll set this one up as our startup project. Go to the form, and let's create bucket. So we'll just paste this code into create bucket. And for the second part, we have an upload button. Okay, so that's our upload, and we'll just paste that into them. Okay, so we'll just try and build that. I try to run it. Okay, so we can see here, we can see our C drive, we can define where the location of the bucket is. So I'll create my new test bucket. So I'll create a bucket here, which is unique across the Amazon Cloud. Okay, so let's try a bucket that exists. Okay, so I think we've created our bucket. So what we'll do is we'll find something to go in our bucket. So let's upload that. Just takes a little minute. Okay, so our bucket is now there. We can delete the bucket if we want. So what we'll do is we'll actually go up one level, and then we'll take our bucket. We can choose the different ones that we've created, and then we'll put that back on our file, on our system. Okay, so you can see there's a put, and then there's a get command that gets the command. Okay, so this is just a simple example of how we can upload and create buckets and upload and download. In this part of the lab, we'll interface to some of the EC2 instances that are running. So at present, these are the instances. So we'll just quit them. Okay, so let's select this one here, which is running, and it has a public URL. Normally we would have an IP address, but we obviously have to pay for that. So what we'll do is we'll access with remote desktop. We'll connect to it. It's administrator, and then the password is Napier. Just takes a little minute to access it. And here we are. So what we'll do is that we'll run Visual Studio. We then open up a website. So let's actually go through that just now. So just remove that. Let's close. So we open a website. We go to inetpub www.root, which is the root folder for our website, and here is the startup file. So what we'll do is we'll just modify this, and we'll put hello. This is my page. Then what we'll do is we'll save that. Okay, so this is our Amazon instance. We will then go to our web browser and access this web server. Okay, so there we are. From our desktop, we can access our instance running in the cloud. Okay, so for the next part, what we'll do is that we'll actually access our code to be able to interface to the EC2. Okay, so there's a running instance, still running. And let's actually see if we can ping it from here. Okay, so we can see that it's alive. Okay, so we'll open up our client. Here's a basic form. So the key things that we want to find out is that we can put in an instance name there, and we can start, reboot, and terminate it. Okay, so let's just run that. Okay, so let's find out what our instance is called. So in this case, here is our instance name. So let's actually reboot. Okay, so we can see immediately that it's actually rebooting the instance. So we've lost the remote desktop. And we won't get access to it until it reboots itself. Okay, so that shows that we can actually we can control our EC2 instances. In the next part of this lab, we'll actually start to use some of the services which are provided by Google. So in this case, we'll access the map service, and we'll actually access also our allocation service. Okay, so we download the toolkit. So let's actually open that up. Okay, just still a minute to load. Okay, so here's our main interface. So with Inside Network, let's go to location. And so this is going to be our main map here. It's basically a web browser component, and what we'll do is we'll actually load up with some JavaScript and then use the mapping service from Google. So let's see what we have here. Okay, so on the find button, we'll do get map, and then the actual code for drawing the map is here. And we'll just replace that method with our new one. So let's build that. Cloud. Okay, so we have location here. This should find Google, hopefully. It resolves it to an IP address here. It just takes a little minute for it to do it. And there we are. Okay, so it's managed to interface to the map service. And we can also ask for a satellite image and so on. So let's try another one. And so we'll ask for the University of Edinburgh, and you can see there that it brings up satellite map. Terrain, road map, and so on. And it should also resolve the IP address of the site too. Okay, so let's have a look at what we actually have. Okay, so the initial thing that we do is to resolve the domain name into an IP address, so that the DNS lookup actually does that for us, and it should give us back what the IP address is. We're then using the service to be able to pick off the longitude and the latitude using a lookup for the IP address. From there we have an API key that we get from Google, and then we actually build up the URL based on the zoom and size of the map. We can add markers and so on, but basically the things that we're adding relate to the longitude and the latitude. We can also define if we want it to be a satellite map or a terrain map by adding on one of the parameters passed into the URL. Okay, so in the end, all we're really doing is building up this URL using the Google service and then putting that to our web browser. Okay, so that's an example of using the Google Cloud services. Okay, so that was a good example of using the Google services. So what we'll do now is that we'll use another one. In this case we'll use Google Books. Okay, so we'll open up our application again, and we'll go to the Books tab this time. Again, it just takes a little minute to load because we're actually recording it just now. There we go. Okay, so we have books. There we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a few books, list them here, and then we'll load up the JavaScript required that will be generated that will pass to Google Books. Okay, so let's look at the code for that one. Okay, so it calls up get books, and hopefully it's filled up books, and that will go into our list box as we have here. The second part of this is to add get books. Okay, and then the final bit is to add in a get Google Book. So this contains the basic JavaScript required to access the book. Here we have it here. Okay, so we'll paste it in. Let's build it. Right then, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so I've preloaded a few books. So we define it with the name that's going to appear in the list box, and then the double hash, and then the actual ISBN. It's the ISBN number that we actually use to access the Google Book. Okay, so let's look at books. Let's find our books. Okay, so click on here, and hopefully if we've generated the right script, then we actually have our Google Book. And we should be able to do it for the other ones too. Okay, so if we actually have a look at what we have, so we should find that we actually split off the ISBN number, and then we have a class with a name and an ISBN, and then when we actually call up our Google Book, we pass in the ISBN number, then we have a fairly standard piece of JavaScript, and all we really do is to load in the ISBN number here and this JavaScript which we've captured when we're accessing Google Books actually does the work for us. Okay, so this is showing us a very simple example of accessing the services. In the